I'm going to try to give a really quick response here to Andrew, who is at Fight Club 2K3. He shot up a video called Narratives, Ego, and Limitations, and this was a really great video. I really enjoyed it. I thought this was, for me, it was helpful. He used some benchmarks that I'm familiar with, and I think he set this up in a really great way for me to, again, try to address it and maybe use it as a launch pad into some of the discussion about cognitive dissonance that I had done earlier in relation to that theory of everything. So if people have seen the theory of everything or they've seen my response to that, this would be maybe a further continuation of that. I think one of the most important things to know about Leon Festinger and cognitive dissonance theory is how it emerged. You know, Festinger, and this was like in the late 50s, mid 50s, something like this, you know, it was a while back, he was studying doomsday cults, and there was a doomsday cult that had a belief about the impending end of the world, and they had kind of the evidence for all the prophecies to be fulfilled. And what ultimately happened was the doomsday didn't happen. That is, the end of the world never happened. And his initial prediction was going to be, well, this is the end of the cult. The people are going to see that obviously this was all BS. And what happened instead was it intensified their belief. Yeah, it was his first book. I think it was his first book called When Prophecy Fails. And it really revolutionized the social psychological literature at the time. And, you know, it's been one of the most replicated, and now, you know, it's meat and potatoes psychology in the contemporary world. I think most people understand the role of cognitive dissonance. But it is interesting that we don't see the way that that plays out here, for example, in YouTube. That is, the thing about the theory of everything is that the more that people are caught within narratives that help them attach to an ego, the more that cognitive dissonance just entrenches them in the view they're already in. So it doesn't really help people to come into contact with other views if they're already overly ego attached. That is, the cognitive dissonance for them just motivates further entrenchment and solidification within their already held view. I mean, that was basically what, you know, some of was implied in When Prophecy Fails. Now, but I think the point is that the more that people can get out of ego attachment, the more that they can adopt this kind of David Bohmian observing thought, a sort of assuming a posture of awareness which tries to suspend your reaction to thought. You know, don't let the feeling just come up and come out of nowhere, but to actually observe the relationship between your thought and your feeling and the way that you act in the world. I think the more that we can do that, the more that we can become, again, detached from ego. So yeah, I think there is a sense that there is the possibility for a kind of ego that comes through language acquisition, but that can be multivaried, and the kind of form that it's taken in contemporary consumer capitalist culture is one that unfortunately maybe entrenches people. It traps them with a kind of, again, a small notion of self, a small notion of ego, whereas people can, through learning to again, to suspend reaction, to detach from ego, to experience oneself as place and moment of the cosmos rather than something that's over against another thing called the world. The more that a person can see, again, this sort of unified experience that's prior to this division that we break called the subject and the object, right? I mean, I think as people move into that, then cognitive dissonance can play a very different role. The person can experience the cognitive dissonance and perhaps actually change, because in some way you say, well, there's not really a person there to change. Again, some of it gets you know, a little bit spooky in the language, but I think we get the drift of what the metaphor would mean there. It's, you know, the point is that there are different ways that people can liberate themselves, and there is a great value to YouTube discourse, to engage in other views, and to have the criticism and the haggling, to really try to hear what other people are saying if you really are interested in the truth, But my guess is that the more that people are attached to their ego, the more that they only surround themselves with views that are similar. And that the more that people are kind of ego-less, the more that they could be capacitated to deal with what to other people would be just too much cognitive dissonance to be able to incorporate those different views. That is, if some person has to be in the all-theist camp or the all-atheist camp, and they can't make room for one or the other, there is something that when they encounter the other, the cognitive dissonance re-entrenches their view. It doesn't help to otherize them. It doesn't help to spin out of new possibilities. That would be my sense of it. At any rate, I did enjoy your video quite a bit. It was great stuff, and I do think, yeah, for people to try to look at the way narrative and ego kind of intertwine in language, and they do place, whether we recognize it or not, various forms of limitation. Yeah, so thanks.